Hey everybody, welcome back. I got to get this started off with a thank you because part one did its thing on TikTok, guys. At the time I'm recording this, on there it has about 13.2 thousand views and 1,873 likes, a new record for me. And I really don't take that for granted. You all are actually building along with me and saving it and coming back to it. That's what I wanted this channel to be, so thank you so much. Um, as you can see here, we're still on slides for this one. My recording setup just isn't fully there yet, and I'm like this close. I'll have the presentation pinned in the comments and linked in the description like last time, so you can kind of pull it up and follow along at your own pace. All right, let's get into part two. Now, our lab is just a domain controller from part one. It's sitting by itself, kind of like building a Wi-Fi router and never really connecting anything to it. It works, but it's not doing anything useful. Today, we are going to change that. As you can see above me, there are 5 steps on this slide. The main thing I want you to understand is that this is a chain. Every step depends on the one before it, kind of like all of technology. Like the VM has to be set up right for the install to go smooth. The install has to be the right edition of Windows, or the domain join won't even be an option. DNS has to be pointing to the right place, or the client just can't find the domain controller. It's all connected. So when I tell you something matters, it's because skipping it breaks everything after it. All right. The slides lay out every click for creating the VM. So let me just talk to you about what actually to be thinking about here. The client name, client01, isn't just for VirtualBox. Once this machine joins the domain, that's the name DC01 sees in Active Directory. In the real world, companies have naming conventions for every machine on the network. Finance department might be FinPCO1. Marketing might be MKTPCO1. We're going to keep it simple, but the point is to have that name become the computer's identity on the domain. Now, for resources, you can kind of see some settings up here, but if you can swing 4,096 megs of RAM instead of 2,048, you should do it. The difference is pretty noticeable because like Windows and a VM on 2 gig feels kind of like fighting you the whole time. And if you're worried about the 50 gig hard disk taking up too much space, don't be. Dynamically allocated just means it only uses what it needs, so your drive might only lose 15 or 20 gigs for a while. Now, here the ISO attachment is pretty straightforward. The slide kind of has everything to do. What I want to talk about is the networking because this is where the concept matters. We're going to be using bridge adapting, which kind of means in VirtualBox, it takes your VM and then puts it directly on your home network. As far as your router is concerned, client O1 is just another device like a laptop or a phone. And that's important because DCO1 is also on your home network through bridge mode. They need to be on the same network so that they can kind of talk back and forth to each other. Now, the mistake I see people make all the time is picking a different adapter than what DCO1 is using or leaving it on NAT without realizing it. Now, NAT puts the VM behind its own little private network, which means that DCO1 can't reach it. And vice versa, it can't reach DCO1. It basically isolates it. So the rule here is simple. Same adapter as DCO1 or your domain controller. And if you remember nothing else from this slide, remember that. Now, this is a quick checkpoint on the slide. Just kind of eyeball your settings before you boot. You need to verify everything right here. Just catch a pattern and catch a problem before you solve it because a 10-second fix in settings can save you 20 seconds of troubleshooting later on. Now here is our installation of Windows. And there's 2 things I need you to know about this install because the slide covers the process, but these 2 details will save you a lot of grief. This entire lab is free. So when Windows asks you for a product key, you don't need one. Microsoft lets you run Windows unactivated. You'll get a watermark in the corner and eventually lose some cosmetic options, but every feature that matters for Active Directory and just the environment we're creating should work perfectly fine. So don't let the product key screen scare you off, just skip it. Now, the other big point is that you have to choose Windows Pro. not home. This is a deal breaker. Windows Home does not have the ability to join a domain, and Microsoft locks that behind Windows Pro and Enterprise. So if you accidentally pick Home, you won't find out until step 4 when the domain option simply isn't there. So at that point, when you screw up, you'll have to wipe the drive for the VM and start over. 2 seconds of attention saves you a lot of being on screen for an hour. Now, this is finishing the install. The install itself is pretty much on autopilot once you start running it. The only thing I want to explain here is why we need a local account instead of a Microsoft account. Now, Windows really wants you to sign in with a Microsoft account. It's going to push you on it. But think about what we're building. In a few minutes, we're going to be logging into this machine with domain credentials and the account that lives on DC01. The local account is just a way to get the desktop to open up so we can configure the work network settings. And that's its only job. So find the offline account option, and the slide kind of shows you up here where to look. Once you set that up, you can kind of move on to the next step, and that will show you whether you did everything right because it's kind of make or break step of the lab. Now, DNS. I need to explain this concept before you touch anything because this is where most people fail and don't really get why. When you tell a computer to join a domain, it has to find the domain controller first. It can't just guess. The way it finds it is by asking its DNS server, hey, where is lab.local? Now, as of right now, client O1 is asking your home router that question. Your home router has absolutely no idea what lab.local is. It doesn't exist as far as your router is concerned. So the query comes back empty, the domain join fails, and you're staring at an error message. But DC01 is running the DNS server for lab.local. It's the only machine on your network that knows that the domain exists. So the fix is a simple concept. We just need to tell client O1 to stop asking the router and to start asking DC01. That's literally all this step is. We're changing who the client goes to for answers. So this slide breaks down every single click to get the right settings. And that's just because people get turned around here the most with the menus. So take your time with it, go slow, and then move to the next section. Now, next section. I want to make sure you understand what we're changing and what we're not. So we're leaving the IP address on automatic. DHCP from your router handles that. We don't really care what the IP client gets. We care about who it talks to when it needs to look something up. Kind of think of it this way. Your IP is your home address. Your DNS is your contacts list. You're not moving. We're just telling this machine when you need to find something on the network, call DC01, not the router. After you set it, the slide has 2 commands to verify. The reason you verify is because if DNS isn't right, nothing after this works. So not the domain join, not the login, nothing. And the frustrating part is the error messages won't tell you that DNS is the problem. They'll say something vague like the domain could not be contacted. So go ahead and verify this information now. If both commands come back with DHC01's IP, you are solid. If they don't, fix DNS before moving on because I promise you this one step is responsible for more failed domain joins than literally anything else combined. Now for what we've been building towards, the domain join. This slide shows you how to get there, and what I want you to understand is what's actually happening when you switch from work group to domain. So right now, client O1 is what's called a standalone machine. It handles its own users, its own security, its own everything. It doesn't have to answer to anyone. The second you join it to lab.local, that relationship changes. DC01 becomes the authority. It can push group policies to this machine, domain users can log into it, security settings, password rules, software restrictions, all of that can be managed centrally now. And this is the whole reason Active Directory exists. Imagine you're running IT for a company with 5,000 or 500 computers. You're not walking to every desk to change a password policy. You can set it once on the domain controller and then it pushes out to every machine on that domain. What you're doing right now is the same concept at a lab scale. One client instead of 500. But the mechanics are pretty much identical. Now, the credential prompt you get next is actually a security concept worth understanding. The domain controller is asking who's trying to add this machine and are they allowed to? Not just anyone can join computers to a domain. In a real organization, that is carefully controlled permission. Help desk might be able to join machines but not create users. Sysadmins might have broader access. It's all granular inside Active Directory. Now, for our lab, we're using the full admin account, so we've got the keys to everything. If you see welcome to the lab domain, once you follow these steps, you're good. The reboot that comes after this is actually really important because that's when client O1 and DC01 establish what's called a trust relationship. Client O1 gets a computer account in Active Directory, and from that point on, DC01 recognizes it as part of the domain. If you've got an error instead, it's almost always one of two things. DNS isn't pointing to DC01, or DC01 just isn't powered on. What you'll do is quickly go check those and make sure that in the VM, everything is powered. Now, this is our payoff. Client O1 reboots. You click other user. You type in a domain account from part one. But here's the thing that I want you to appreciate about what's happening. When you hit enter, client O1 doesn't check that password locally anymore. It sends those credentials across the network to DC01. DC01 opens an Active Directory's database, looks up the account, verifies the password, and then sends back what's called a Kerberos ticket. That ticket is basically DC01 vouching for you. It says, I checked, this person is who they say they are, let them in. That process is domain authentication. It's happening right now in every hospital, every office building, every university that runs Windows. Someone logs in at their desk, and behind the scenes, a domain controller somewhere is doing exactly what DC01 just did for you. You built that. Now, two quick checks on the slide above here. The who am I on client O1 just basically confirms that you're authenticated as a domain user. And then when you turn over to DC01, if client O1 shows up in the computers folder in Active Directory, both of those sides have recognized the join, and your domain is now fully operational. That's it for part two, guys. Domain controller, client machine, DNS connecting them, domain users are authenticating across the network. That is not a tutorial that you just watched. That is an environment you just built. So if you're working towards Security Plus, I think it's CYSA Plus, or trying to land your first role in cybersecurity, this is what's going to set you apart. You don't have to say, I've read about Active Directory. You can now walk someone through exactly how you built a domain from scratch. And that hits a lot different in an interview. So before I go, we've been doing slides for the first two parts, and I want to know what you guys think. Keep the presentations, or would you rather see my screen as I walk through everything, kind of like as I've been promising? Drop that in the comments. I'll give a few days to collect answers, tally it up, and then kind of put out an update video telling everybody what they've decided, or kind of doing, pitching a hybrid content possibly. But if this helped, please like it, save it, follow if you haven't. Part three is coming, and we're going to get into group policy, which is where Active Directory really opens up. So follow so you don't miss it, and see you in the next one. Peace.